Welcome to the Embodiment Podcast. This show is for you if you see the body as more than a brain taxi. It's for people interested in coming home to the body as a holistic aspect of who we are and how we live. Episodes contain practical tips, exercises you can take away, and interviews with specialists from around the world. I'm your host for today, Mark Walsh. On the show today, Jacques, I can't have messed it up already. I'm leaving this in. Editor, leave this in. I just spent a whole load of time with this guy figuring out how to spell his name. Jacques, the party scientist. Jacques, it's French. Help me out. Jacques, help me out.
Jacques Martiquet.
Great. I've been watching his videos all day. He looks fun. Leadership stuff around being seen in public, stuff around energizing groups, trusting groups. If you're listening to the podcast, he's got a hat on that says "I love consent" that's bright pink, and is wearing a Synchrony kind of disco top. So I think, and he's been recommended to me by Adam Wilder. So Adam, shout out to Adam. You're a good mate. And Jacques, welcome.
Oh, thank you, Mark. You are such a great personality. I feel the vibes. I feel the energy through the screen. I'm sure we've been both figuring out how to transmit these vibes through screens for the last month and a half.
I totally want to talk about that. That's going to be one of our subjects, because we're both people who energize people, lead people, inspire people, and now we've got to do it on Zoom, right? So let's talk about that. But let's start with you, Jacques. Tell us about your life journey, particularly the kind of body aspects of it. Where did you get started, and what got you interested in what you do now?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Yeah, so recently I had two others join my leadership team with Vive, which is my virtual connection agency. And we did a commitment ceremony, and we had the opportunity to share our life stories. And so I think I'll share what's relevant to my specialty, facilitating ecstatic human connection. And I think that there were some critical moments in my life was when my parents divorced, when I got fired from a few positions, and most significantly when I started to journal. And I read a book about mindfulness by Eckhart Tolle, and I started to journal, and I started to really monitor my symptoms, my emotions, and get curious about them. And I actually have a story. I have a story from a significant journal entry, and this was one of the very first. I think this was in 2013. And I was volunteering as an emergency medic at a music festival. And so in the very beginning, my interest in human connection was purely from a public health standpoint. And I think we can both resonate on that, is that human connection is an antidote for a lot of the mental health issues, physical ailments. It's a risk factor for, social isolation is such a risk factor nowadays. And so I worked at music festivals as a medic. And during one of my breaks, I met this crazy man, he was fully crazy, and he led me into the crowd with a toy sword and this spandex Speedo, and I witnessed him change the vibe of about 100 other people around him, just through facial expression and ecstatic body movements. And in my journal entry, I said, I want to be as crazy as him, and I want to impact people like he did. And so that kind of led me on this journey of developing my entertainment, my life of the party, my extroversion. And then lastly, I'll just mention that, I recently went to Envision. So Envision Festival is one of my clients, and it's a great role model for the whole festival industry. And that's when I was really, so I'm a scientist, I'm a pharmacology graduate, and I would like to say my specialty is the pharmacology of human connection. So how does human connection translate to brain chemistry changes? When I went to Envision, I was like, oh, there's so much more than just the science. and I went to breath work, and I discovered all these alternative modalities that really have influenced my practice and my facilitation. And so that was a big step for me as well, is getting immersed in Burning Man and in vision. And, you know, before that, I was like, this stuff's kind of weird. It's not scientific, but, you know, science.
Let me place you a little bit. I'm going to jump in, I hope you don't mind. So where are you growing up? Just geography, first of all.
Canada.
In Canada. Okay. So French.
Canada.
French Canadian. Okay. Canada A. Okay. And so you're a kind of geeky scientist guy, but you get interested in leadership, you get interested in how we influence each other's states. You start realizing there's all this cool stuff out there. You know, we're all, every one of us that listens to this podcast pretty much is a drug dealer, whether you're doing yoga. Well, we're all just,
hey, man,
we're just helping people create their own drugs, right?
Dealer, brother.
I mean, like, whether you're dealing endorphins or oxytocin or whatever, right? There's just different drugs you're dealing, and there's all these methods that shift state. And so, tell me about the leadership piece then. So this is really impressive when you see someone who can get a party started, or who can read a poem and make everyone feel really deep and sad and really evoke some emotion in that, you know. And some people seem to have this natural talent for it. What's your angle?
I mean, for me, definitely not a natural talent. Just so much reflection, so much discomfort, and so much pain led to me becoming this facilitator. I mean, I just came back from an expedition through Europe, and that's why we're talking, right? I met Adam Wilder, and I essentially convinced him to invite me to his team retreat because I led an experience at his festival, his Human Connection Festival. And throughout that journey, I put myself into situations where I thought it was 100%, it was going to be 100% failure rate, and I was going to be judged as a crazy person. But what actually happened is I led parties with hundreds of strangers in public spaces. And I think there is an element, it's a unique style of leadership. It's one where overcoming your self-talk, rethinking what is possible to facilitate in public with strangers. And it's really it's a mental battle of overcoming your fear, overcoming social barriers, and being so out there, but so confident that eventually you got your first followers. And of course, being a leader, you need to nurture those first followers and acknowledge them and give them opportunities to shine. So the whole leadership philosophy, it's a whole method for how to catalyze joy in public spaces. And it's like this whole different realm of leadership.
There's a few things here, because people might think of leadership as sort of theoretical, isn't there? But there's this famous YouTube video of the guy who starts crazy dancing, and then everyone starts dancing with him. And, you know, I've seen people do this in public. You know, people go on the tube and start singing, and everyone starts singing the song with them. They're able to sort of transform, and there's lots of YouTube videos that transform the tube carriage. But we are very held back socially. And I've seen this when I've just gone up to people. I was on the phone to someone yesterday, actually, and someone walked by. And, you know, she looked a little sad and also was very beautiful. And I noticed that. And I just said, excuse me, I hope you don't mind me saying anything. You were absolutely lovely today. I just want to wish you well. And have a lovely day. And I just walked on. And I was on the phone to someone as I said it. And they were like, you can't do that. What did you just do? Was that a stranger? And I was like, yeah. Now they're smiling and they're really happy. And they look, you know, I wasn't harassing the person. They looked like I had some sense it might be welcome. And they were like, that's a superpower. You just talk to a stranger. And I was like, yeah, now they're smiling. Okay, and I just wanted to get... But to the person I was speaking to on the phone, it was like I'd done magic.
It is magic because, for one thing, it's very uncommon. And the other thing is that, it is socially acceptable. But we're getting to this point where there's a requirement for such a context. It's like we suddenly need reasons to connect with one another. So there's this whole issue of social trust and how it's related to happiness in cities. And social trust is one of the questions to evaluate social trust, and this is my scientist perspective getting in here, is if you dropped your wallet, would someone pick it up and give it back to you? That's a great question to ask for evaluating social trust in a city. And right now what we're seeing is like very low social trust in cities. And what that means is like, if a stranger comes up to you and just wants to connect with you, you're like skeptical. And that skepticism is something we need to work around through body language and through not asking for shit and just, keeping our distance, but smiling. And yeah, so I think, I get high off this stuff. Like I talk to strangers everywhere, and I get so curious. I met a graffiti artist on a ski bus once, and I just asked them about what they love. And it's like,
that's a great opening question. What do you love is a great opening question, because immediately it brings out people's best sides. I really like that question as a get to know you question. Like, what are you into, man? What do you love? Different ways to say it. And I've noticed this in COVID. There's been this people standing in supermarket queues. On the one hand, we're even more scared to talk to each other, and it's been sort of legally obliged that we have to keep 2 meters distance. So on the one hand, it's made the social trust less. You could have a disease. I don't someone's dog came up to you. I was like, I want to touch your dog. I don't know where it's been.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I've also seen people, this is very British, kind of, make jokes, and in the supermarket queue be like, oh, you're 2 meters away. Okay. And there's a little like an excuse to talk kind of thing. And as you say, the key piece there is, how do you build trust? How do you create that sense of safety? Like in this case with the compliment, I think it was the woman in question just really got that it was sincere and wasn't going anywhere. I was on the phone to someone. I wasn't trying to get anything. And it was just a gift, and it came across as really feeling really safe and natural and authentic to her. So it was well received,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Like, what are the keys to being able to break the social conformity that says, don't do crowd surfing in public or whatever scheme you've got going on,
Yeah, man. The stuff that I always thought was impossible, that I've achieved in public. I mean, I've been on the tube.
Give us some examples, because I know you've done this relationship, but listeners might not.
Yeah. So let me give a few examples. In Berlin. Okay. Let me say first begin with London. So London Halloween, it was me and 2 friends. We turned on our speaker, led a few line dance activities, wandered around the streets with music for an hour. And in that first hour, we recruited about 150 people who stayed with us until 2 a.m. And what we did is we all went on top of a double-decker bus and like turned the bus into a party. And so it was just, it's like, wait, like we don't know one another, but we just like found this guy, and now we're having this shared experience together. And like, now we're like a family. It's like we created a family out of a bunch of strangers, right? Another example is just on the tube. On the tube, everyone's disconnected. It's quiet. What we'll do is I have a particular songs that I know. And music is so powerful for connecting people. If everyone knows the song and the song is lighthearted, it can completely transform the vibe in a room and make it safe for people and give people that circumstance to connect. If there's a song on, you can smile at someone and be like, what is this? So
people always an excuse, don't they? It's like in Britain, it's complaining about the weather or the COVID thing. Or it's like, we're just waiting for half an excuse to connect.
And that's part of the skill. It's finding an excuse to connect, or making it seem like an excuse, so that people are just like, why are you connecting with me? It's more so like, I'm relating with you. I'm not connecting with you just because it's fun to connect with others. That's kind of weird, right? It's more so, I see why you're connecting with me, and it's not something I need to be concerned about. So we went on the tube, and we start off with a very cold, group of people. And we start with like Careless Whisperer, like do 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 do, and usually I'm in a banana suit, right? Because the banana suit immediately gets people to smile. I'm re-questioning the banana suit because it's not very relatable, but what it certainly does is it gives people permission to be a little bit like an idiot, because I'm much more of an idiot than they are.
There's a gesture. It kind of makes it safe. Like, well, he's obviously crazy, so let's just go along, have fun with him. Like,
well, you raised the bar so hard, right? So high. I mean, exaggerating vulnerability and exaggerating mistakes is a great way to as a leader show that it's safe for others to do the same. So if I intentionally embarrass myself on the tube, then I make it safe for others to smile, like way, way lower on the threshold.
Because they're looking at you and going, listen, no, there's no bad consequences happening to this guy in a banana suit. That, there's probably not going to be a bad consequence for me to just singing along with him. Like, and if the police come, he's clearly the ringleader. Like he's getting arrested before me here. It strikes me there's two joys to what you do. One is connection, sort of the oxytocin, we all want to connect, we want to sing together and hug and all that. And the other one is the transgressive quality. And I've enjoyed doing small transgressive things, like standing the wrong way around in a lift. Like if you're going up an elevator and you just turn to face the other way. Now, I'm not trying to bring joy. I like to fuck with people. It's different. I have no interest.
Yeah.
So,
oh my gosh.
Just to stand the wrong way around. And why is it the wrong way around? Who cares, right? Because it's not illegal. It's not immoral, but it's transgressive. So I like to find those things that are transgressive, and it makes me afraid. And I like that personally. I find there's a thrill in that, and it's like a roller. It's like a social roller coaster. And I'd ask listeners, just try that one. Most people can't do it. You can't do it. You're physically incapable of just standing the opposite way around because it feels too socially transgressive. So how do you get past that socially transgressive conformity we all have, which says don't do anything weird, or don't talk to a stranger,
Yeah. And I definitely get a thrill out of that too. And the reason why we do crowd surfing is because when people overcome fears, they actually get a high from that fear. So it's like a natural drug. So I use discomfort I get so excited when I do something, like when I bring a mini trampoline into a public subway and start jumping on it and like get people to laugh. I get a huge rush. So how do I think it's first a mindset. It's a mindset that it's not the outcome that matters necessarily. It's that you've taken an attempt to experiment with a new method with a good intention.
Okay.
So I justify my transgressiveness. I mean, I'm going into public and blasting music and dancing in a banana suit. And I mean, like the most transgressive I've been was on a plane. I've gotten people to clap and sing on planes, right? And that is really transgressive.
Yeah, because people are getting banned from the airline and this sort of thing.
Yeah. And I justify it. I justify it because every time I attempt to do it, and I think it's inappropriate, I expand my awareness of what is actually appropriate and possible. The number of times that I've spread joy and had an incredible impact on others where I thought it was completely impossible. Like, we have no idea. Like, the social barriers are total illusions. People want to connect. People want to smile. People want to clap. And, sure, one time when I play Hallelujah when the flight lands, and I get everyone to laugh and clap. and it worked on one flight, but the other flight, like, it was all Germans.
That's what people fear, isn't it, Germans? But no, people fear the social, that, you know, I told a joke earlier. I was teaching a webinar to 600 people. I told a joke and it just went flat. And it's like, part of me just wanted to die. I'm like, I'm full of myself. Right?
But see, you know, the mindset that I get is like, oh my gosh, this was such a success. Regardless of the outcome, I still attempted to do this. And statistically, I'm always going to fail eventually, but that is a step forward, right?
So the frame is I'm brave to do this. I'm doing something which, because a lot of this is just practice. Like, I'm a fairly transgressive person socially. I view a lot of social situations as sort of playgrounds to explore. And because I've found most of the limitations I thought existed just didn't exist. They were purely in my head, and there was so much I could get away with, if nothing else.
Yep. How do we test those ingrained misconceptions if we don't move away from the norm? We won't actually be able to test our ideas of social barriers if we don't attempt to challenge them. So, and you know,
this is 5 years old though. So like most people do at 5 years old, they transgress, then they learn not to, and then they sort of it's like they become over. I mean, maybe you're just a massive show off. I mean, if people listening to this might be like, look, Mark just likes to cause shit and Jacques just likes to show off. I mean, is this just a character kind of thing that we should have put out years ago?
I have a totally different philosophy around that. One of my personal affirmations is I get people's attention so that I can transform their mood. Because you cannot transform someone's mood and make their day without having their attention. It's not really possible. Sure. So there's so many people out there who are just there to entertain and to show off and engage people in a passive observational way. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to engage them in the experience, and everything I'm doing, like, I try to get people to clap. I mean, oftentimes I'm just, you know, I did the Thriller dance alone on a tube once, and that was just to make people smile and whatnot. But really, it's a matter of shifting your intention around the attention. The intention of the attention is to lift people up and show people that it's okay to wave at others and smile and release positive emotions. Man, we have this huge repression of both negative emotions in our Western culture and positive emotions. You're a crazy person if you're like weeping and crying in public, but also if you're smiling and laughing and dancing in public. It's this crazy dichotomy.
Keep saying interesting things. I'm closing my window because it's cold.
And so what I've realized is that I'm going to be the one giving everyone permission to unleash the joy of simple, monotonous situations. And so many times, you know, we don't see that possibility in very boring situations, but all it takes is a song and, you know, someone waving and like clapping to get people being like, oh wait, there's a lot of opportunity in this random train ride, right? Or this airplane ride. And that's the other thing that I wanted to bring up is you were saying the show off part, right? Well, I argue that if we have the ability to impact people in such a powerful way, it's almost like our obligation to get people's attention and to raise their mood. You know, like the impact we can have by our own vulnerability and our own public playfulness is, I think, far exceeds the risk of putting a bunch of people in a bad mood. If we're thinking about how to impact people positively, and if we're evaluating like our impact on people's mood, I think that there's a high reward risk ratio for, these public acts of silliness and dance and vulnerability. I think there's a huge reward. You're benefiting people massively. And so I think it's a whole different approach to altruism almost.
I think once you know how you could impact people's feeling, it sort of becomes, why would you hold that back in a way? Like, why would I not say a nice thing to that person? Why would I not lift that person's spirit? And there's also an arrogance in it. There's also a kind of, I'm going to influence your mood, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like mood influence, whether it be charm, seduction, influence, there's a way in which there's a powerful set of tools there.
Yeah.
I think I always have in mind is this person in service to the group they're influencing, or is it for their own benefit? Like, for example, there's an ego hit. There's definitely an ego hit in being the center of it. Wow, I made this party bus go. Or, hey, I made her smile. The ego hit that. So I think it's very easy for that kind of like me putting myself in the center of the service rather than actually it being a gift, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that as facilitators, we are definitely a higher risk for narcissism, for sure. And I think that very few people communicate how it's, if I try to throw a party on a tube, sure, I'm evaluating people's reactions to my experiments, but oftentimes I don't hear much. People are so non-confrontational nowadays that I never really hear about any negative impact I've had on people. But you know what, man? I argue that if you see someone, it's like the grandma. It's like the grandma on the beach who sees a bunch of young people having fun and dancing and cheering, and it's like the stereotypical grumpy grandma who's like, oh, those young kids shouldn't be so loud and having fun. Like, it's that mindset. Those people who are negatively impacted by public expression of joy are in a toxic mindset, in my opinion.
Jack, let me push back as this. If you get on the train when I'm reading my book and you start singing, I'm going to punch you in the face. Okay, just so you know, I'm not some loud motherfucker singing on my train. Okay, like I'm that guy who's just sitting there rolling his eyes, hating you inside. Like, and then maybe people are a bit more introverted. They just want to chill. They don't necessarily want to be in the party. I don't want my train to be a party all the time.
Quick break from the interview to tell you about our shop and a deal we've got on there, and also about some events that are coming up. So if you go to Embodied Facilitator /shop and use the code podcast 50 is the code, you can get 50% off anything in the shop. And what have we got on there? How to design training, trauma for facilitators, breath work, leadership, resilience, life purpose. There's a bunch of books, there's a bunch of e-courses, mostly for facilitators, trainers, coaches, yogis, different ebooks. But that code will give you 50% out off anything at all there in the shop. So that could save you, let's say, up to £100, which is about $120. So well worth having that code. Go to embodiedfacilitator.com/shop. Also on that website, you will see embodiedfacilitator.com/events-calendar. Just look under events under the main title. You'll see all the stuff we've got coming up for events. We regularly have free online events. If you're interested in embodiment, we have them on coaching, life purpose, marketing, all trauma, all sorts of things. So have a look at the events page. You can see the different one-day events we've got coming up related to the conference and all kinds of other stuff. Okay, so all of that is on embodiedfacilitator.com. And remember that code there. That code is podcast50 if you want 50% off anything. There you go. A good deal. Back to the interview.
I know, like when the drunk people start singing on the plane on the way to Malaga, I'm just like, I don't really want to be around the drunk singing people. Upgrade me to first class with the boring people.
You're taking it to the extreme. I agree with the music. I agree with the singing, but what I'm more saying is generally there are some people who see the public expression of joy as a nuisance and as something that is disturbing their peace. But right. I think of it totally differently in that oh my gosh, this is contagious. And if I actually open my eyes to it and look into their eyes, look into that person's eyes who's having an amazing time right now. But when alcohol is involved, it's very different. Like my mindset's a little different.
It's culture. Like Canadians are not going to be, not going to be a conflict verse. I tell you who's great at being intrusively joyful is Italians. Like there's so many times Italians have pissed me off with their joyfulness and their singing and their hugging and all the rest of it. And then I've just gone, fuck it, and gone with it and just had a really good time. There's definitely a cultural piece that certain cultures feel more okay with their joy in public. So I'm not sure I want to make it that it's right or wrong in quite that way, but I see what you're doing.
We definitely have the right to quiet peacefulness. And I think that there's certain spaces where that's the code. And I think in those spaces, when someone comes in and violates that code, it's very different, right? What are people's expectations? What's the code of ethics of this space? That's when it gets tricky, right? Because I resonate with you. We all fluctuate in terms of our physical energy and what our needs are. If I slept horribly last night and I just want to read my book and I don't want to socialize and I don't want to be promoting joy in public, then that's perfectly okay. But I will say that one of my ways for changing my state, if I'm in a low physical energy and I'm in a horrible mood, is I talk to a stranger and I try to make their day. I try to benefit them. I try to make them feel amazing because that gives me a rush every single time that I do it.
Yep. Yeah. No, I see where you come from. My wife's super introverted. She'd hate you. She'd hate you so much. But it's yeah.
Tell me more.
So she regards the entire world as her space not to be intruded upon. She likes COVID because people keep away from her. And she liked New Zealand when we went there because people give space. And Australia, people culturally come much more into your face. They're like, g'day. She liked Japan because people have this respectful distance, which I think both are valid, right? Like, do I want to give this person, Japanese people are great at this culturally, not all, but most, the vast majority. Like, they'll give you this beautiful, respectful distance that is considered a real gift and a compliment. As opposed to, I'm going to try and make your day and cheer you up. But I think there's space for both, isn't there? Like both can have a beautiful considerate, both can be in service or both can be taking, right?
I love this because it brings into the conversation, do we get people's consent before we attempt to make their day? And is it acceptable? Is the context of the situation, are people in this environment, have they implicitly consented to the public expression of joy or something, right? So I really like that. And that's a very sensitive issue that I've reflected on a lot, is when I am throwing these massive parties in public, there are people who have not consented to music, to dance. And is it a form of manipulation to put them into a state where they're enjoying themselves? And all those questions.
You have a right to influence the states of others, even in a direction that might be considered positive. And joy, for example, isn't always where I want to go. If I was just coming back from my dad's funeral, I don't want someone trying to get me into joy. I want to be in my sadness, right? So there's not joy isn't always a good thing. And do I get a choice about that? It's kind of, or like how much what's the general rule? Like, I mean, I gave this person a compliment earlier. I mean, that's street harassment by some laws, right? Yeah. I mean, even though it's well-intended and it was non-sleazy or anything, it was just a compliment. And she didn't agree to it. I pretty much gave it to her before she had a chance to say, actually, don't give me a compliment, fuck you. And I have asked people before, may I give you a compliment? And they just went, no. And I've gone, okay, have a lovely day. But I was like, okay, so what's the line with that?
Yeah, it's generally when I've transgressed, I haven't regretted it. I generally don't really regret it ever, because again, I've analyzed that ratio of risk reward, and the reward is always, it brings people together, it breaks the ice, you can see people's like tension in their muscles just decrease. So, but I think it's just incredibly important when you're doing what I do and trying to get strangers to connect in public spaces, is to always meet people meet the mood of the environment, adapt to the environment, and constantly reevaluate how you're being received. And so I have like 300 different songs and activities that might just begin with snapping to a beat, to a very low energy track. And this is how we begin on the tube. And then gradually we'll elevate the energy until bam, crowd surfing happens. And so I think that part of the way that I navigate the whole conversation around transgressing and upholding consent is by starting in a very, very slow and safe way.
Calibration. I mean, calibration is a key principle of good embodied training. You don't go in hard, you go in soft, and there's a listening I'm hearing as well. So it's like, okay, maybe this isn't the place for it. Maybe this is a whole train full of people who've just come from a funeral and they don't fucking need this. There's a listening. I'm hearing there's a listening there, and I'm hearing there's a calibration there, which I think are the two key things to if it's not explicit verbal consent, we do have to give consent to go along with something. I think no one's so manipulatively, seductively amazing at embodied leadership that there doesn't have to be at least there's the moment where the Italians are partying and I go, fuck it. And there's a choice to sort of go along with it, as it were. So I think there is a implicit consent in that, isn't there? And if that's not there, then it feels very different.
Yeah. Well, the reaction, the body's reaction is these people are disrespecting me, and it's less so like the emotional contagion of that positive energy. It's more so what's in our minds is like, I did not give these people consent to do that, and I'm upset about that. So I get that.
You're drinking from a beaker. Is that the scientist? The scientist brand. Check you out. What about the leadership side? Because I saw a good video of you, really nice talk you did. I think some company, some corporation, you were talking about essentially what I would call embodied leadership and this infective mood quality, how we listen to people, how we infect mood, being able to be creative with that, how we build trust. Maybe say some of the things that in the sort of leadership context is not everyone's interested in singing on a bus or, doing the outrageous things. So how does this translate to people that are just in a more normal kind of world? But what you're talking about are key principles of embodied leadership here.
Yes. The method that we've created is very much based on how to produce psychological safety within groups. So how do we enable people to feel safe to take interpersonal risks? It's about like brain chemistry, like shifting people's brain chemicals, endorphins, oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin. And then, of course, we also want to basically communicate a culture to our groups where we have all these principles like learning, engagement, and generosity. So there's a few different principles that we use in our method, and one of which is these cultural principles. Another which is like physical proximity and synchrony. So if we can get everyone in the group close together and doing something in a similar way, the same thing, it will actually lead to social bonding.
I mean, that's what it is, right? Like you think of like dancing tango with someone, you're close and you're synchronizing. Yeah. That's courtship principles of those two principles, right?
Yeah. And so, some of the other principles we use are, so we have, basically my whole research has focused on what are the human behaviors that lead to social bonding and what has been done in prehistoric civilizations to promote social bonding. And so, yeah, sure, there's a lot of inaccessible parts to it, but what makes it more accessible is warming people up, producing psychological safety by promoting principles like the importance of growth and learning and vulnerability, and really role modeling that. We leverage generosity. So we have this principle at Vive, and it's called the community of kindness. And whereas in most entertainment spaces, people compete with one another for reputation and fun, what we try to do at our experiences is create a culture where you gain status by serving others and creating fun for others. And so part of it is just educating people on the values of the community, and then, encouraging and role modeling those values during the experience. And so for normal people, I think that there's a few takeaways from these principles. And I mean, for normal people, what I mean by that is like professionals, because we've worked with different companies and whatnot, right? And what we do is, I think like music is just one core tool that everyone can use and which is really accessible for everyone. And it's just using music that everyone can relate to create that sense of unity and shared experience. And something as simple as getting people to clap to a song, or move their bodies in synchrony to a song can really change an entire group dynamic. So was your question was about principles of embodied leadership? Is that right?
Yeah. So I mean, they make total sense to me. Proximity, synchronization. I never know what people mean by psychological safety, but certainly sort of modeling respect and consent. I've seen it in a group, for example, when someone decides not to do it and that's respected, the whole group kind of sinks in trust a bit deeper of like, oh, okay, you're allowed to say no, therefore I'm going to say yes. I remember once there was two young girls, the children of my friend, and one of the older sister I'd known for years, I picked her up and I'm throwing her around and she loves it, she's squealing, it's great. And then I said to the younger kid, I said, can I pick you up? And she went, no. I went, oh, okay. And then she went, oh, then yes. Because as soon as she realized she had a choice, she had trust to then play with me, and she'd seen her older sister do it. So that principle of sort of modeling, okay, well, my sister did that and that looked fun. So it was already sort of halfway there. But it was a moment of like, that's what psychological safety means to me, was this idea that she was allowed to say no and that would be respected. And even just in a play context, let alone some of the more, other contexts we have. So that was a moment of insight for me.
Yeah, well, I just think back to a book that I read called Drive, and it describes like the three main motives for thriving in a professional context. And so what you can do as a leader or a manager to create thriving and highly motivated team members, you can cultivate autonomy in those team members. So giving them agency and giving them control over their environment. You can give them mastery. So giving them opportunities to master their craft, and then finally meaning. So I think autonomy and agency is definitely, and I just think back to some of the research on forced fun as well. And so I study a lot of the like organizational psychology of it all. And the reality is people will not have fun if they have not consented to that fun in a workplace. So if there's any coercive element, people are not in social engagement mode. They're in sympathetic mode. So they're stressed and they don't want to be there and they don't feel safe.
The office forced to attend kind of thing that, it doesn't actually feel good, or the thing your mum makes you go to as a kid that you're supposed to sing along. So,
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. And I think that one of the solutions to that is, and this is how I foresee Vive influencing nightlife and entertainment, is incorporating more co-creativity within experiences and giving people opportunities to be a creative agent within the experience. And my core belief is that we have an infinite source of joy and amusement around us at all times. Maybe not during COVID, but because of social distancing, but still and the idea behind that is that every other human in your vicinity is a source of joy and amusement to every other human. And we're so hardwired to access joy. And it's just, for me, like, my perspective on human connection is no longer, these are just, these are just people in their lives and I should avoid them and they're strangers. It's more so, gosh, if I connect with one of these people, it's going to change my state and it's going to be such a more positive, meaningful experience than watching TikTok, right?
I've never watched TikTok because I'm not 12. But just so people didn't know, your website, you mentioned Vive, that's the name of your company, right? VYVE.life, just to point people in a good direction. And I'd be nice website, by the way. Be good to talk about the quarantine thing a little bit as well. Like, your whole thing is human connection and play, and now everybody's kind of serious, and we're not allowed to touch each other. I had a good friend from Denmark, and he runs a movement school, and he just said, "My business has just been made illegal," was how he very bluntly put it, because his business was connection, and different ways of acro yoga and different ways to do that. And he was like, "Shit, what do I do now?" And he's managed to move it online. God love him, good bloke. But it was a hell of a thing to realize all of a sudden it was illegal. You're talking about proximity. That's illegal. One of your main tools is out the window. Yeah. So how is it hitting you, this whole COVID situation?
Well, I'll first say that I actually read an article by a neuroscientist. He studies the neuroscience of trust. He's called the Oxytocin Doctor. You can Google him and find him. And he, in one of his articles, he showed that we can still actually get oxytocin through online interactions and online face-to-face contact. And I didn't really believe in that at first, but now that I've been innovating on my method through Zoom parties and Zoom festival experiences, I totally believe that it's possible to mimic the effects of proximity and touch, but through a screen. So I totally thought my business was going to shut down. And then we said, okay, well, hold on, Club Quarantine, they're throwing online parties. So let's see if we can take some of this human connection online. So we've been doing that for a month and a half and leading parties for like companies as well. And, I think we very much underappreciate our versatility. And again, we have these illusions of what's possible. And until we really put them to the test by attempting to create human connection through Zoom, we're never really going to know. And what we've discovered is that we can actually reach the same emotional intensity of a jam-packed alley with thousands of people jumping in Synchrony. We can actually create that through Zoom. And it's like nuts.
Yeah, it's surprising.
So
What we found.
It's brilliant. And I think that, if we can figure out how to create the same health benefits of human connection virtually, we're going to be able to compete better with like Netflix and TikTok and all these very passive, addictive forms of entertainment.
Sorry if I was mean to you earlier about this. What is TikTok? I'm sorry if I sound 212. What is it? I've heard of Snapchat. I know what Instagram is, but what's TikTok? Just give me the brief version.
TikTok, I would say, is an echo chamber of short, addictive videos of people dancing and
it's the fun stuff. It seemed to be. I saw a thing on Facebook, like just sort of fun videos of people dancing and things like that.
Yeah, it's like YouTube, but it's built to keep you watching, repeat it, and it's built to keep you in that like instant gratification mindset because they're funny.
Oh, that's cool. There's a on a skateboard. Oh, there's a guy doing backflips in Burger King. Oh, wow, I'm totally never going to go on that. Okay, that sounds like a nightmare.
Oh, no, Mark, you got to get on there and you got to slow people down. You are the Messiah, man. You need to get on there for sure.
Slow talk. I can call it. I do the masculine version. It'll be called TikTok.
That is TikTok.
It'd just be like boring things for men to look at that aren't exciting. That's my version. Okay, cool. This has been fun, as I expected it would be. And on your website, you do weddings, bar mitzvahs, funerals. You ever done a funeral? Like a wedding?
Yeah. So we've been really thinking about how to incorporate sadness into a party, and we haven't yet experimented with that, but we hope to eventually. I think that what I see is like a party being like a roller coaster. We're still developing the experience, but every emotion is accepted, and so I want to experiment more with that for sure, like throwing funeral celebrations.
Jokes aside, the sort of Irish wake model might be quite a nice example of a kind of wave, because there's a sad part and there's a party part. So that might be a sort of model for that. And it's interesting. I think we have a specialism in what emotion we evoke in people. And there are definitely like poets I know that can really make people very sad. And it actually does serve a function, and I'm good at making people angry. That's my gift. So, you could have different specialists to do an emotional kind of, you could bring the joy and, we could make a cocktail. But it does look interesting. Where do people find out more about you then? I enjoyed what I saw of your stuff online. So where do people go?
Yeah. So I would recommend all of you to just check out our Instagram. That's probably the most active. And it's just VYVE Life. And everyone's invited to, it's different time zones, but we do a festival in your living room every Friday, and that's a free event. And essentially the vision for that is to create a tested method for annihilating loneliness in everyone who attends and giving people like a rush of joy on a consistent basis, like just a scientific method for creating like powerful joy and connection through Zoom.
Very nice. Very nice. I'm just adding you on the gram because I'm trying to get more into that one. Oh, there's all these social medias. I'm getting old, man. I don't want to be that grumpy old guy. So, okay. Final message about the body to finish us off, Jacques.
Yes. Let me reflect on that. I think that I just want to emphasize that I just want to emphasize that in times when our body contracts and our shoulders tension and we start to experience the fear of and a sympathetic nervous response, I think there are tools that we can use to put ourselves into an expansive state and really into a love state. And human connection, touch, eye contact, all those are means to overcome that fear, that contraction, and to benefit everyone in our surroundings by doing so. And this is what I do when I'm trying to attempt to throw a public party, is I'm feeling that response, and I need to game my body. I need to leverage different techniques to put myself into that infectious positivity state.
We don't have to be victims of our state, do we? And we can positively influence others. So,
yes.
Well, really, I'm with you on this. I'm with you.
And finally, the last thing I'll say is everyone has a body. Therefore, everyone has an intrinsic source of joy through their bodies. And that's my core belief with Vive. We want to give every human the ability to access joy through human connection and through their bodies.
Just reminded me to masturbate. Thank you. I know I had something else to do this evening.
There you go, man.
Jacques, this has been fun. Thanks for joining us.
Some ways to get more, to give back, and to get more involved now. So the biggest request I have would be to share the podcast with your friends, people that you think would really enjoy it. Email it to them, put it on your social media, tell them about it, old school. Really appreciate that. Equally, if you want to support us financially, you can go to Patreon. That's patreon.com/Embodiment Podcast and give us $1 an episode. And I'd say they're well worth $1. So that's less than £1 if you're in UK-ish. So yeah, please go there. On the embodiedfacilitator.com website is where this is hosted. If most people I think listen to for iTunes. iTunes, we'd certainly appreciate a review. The way iTunes works means that a review means more people will find it. iTunes regards it as more important for searches. So even a couple of sentences review really does help as a little thank you to us. And if you want to go to embodiedfacilitator.com, you can see the actual, links to the sites. There's comments on there. The Facebook group tends to be where people discuss things. So if you go to put in the Embodiment Podcast into Facebook, there's a page which is relatively quiet and a group which does have some discussion on. So I will reply to things personally there. So also on embodiedfacilitator.com website, there's all sorts of freebies there. There's videos, there's free ebooks, there's ebooks you can buy. And of course, there's our newsletter list. If you want to stay in touch and learn about things like the Embodied Facilitator Course and our next Embodied Yoga Principles teacher training, then go to that website and you'll see a little pop-up and you can get the newsletter through there. Okay, so I think they're the main ones. Tell your friends, pay us some money on Patreon, give us a review on iTunes, send us your email if you want to be on the newsletter list, and get involved on the Facebook there. Bit long. Pick whatever you like that works for you. Until next time, welcome home to the body.